Hello, my name is Henry Ford, and I represent the Cook County Bar Association. You are watching a live interactive call-in show brought to you by CAN TV 21. Our guest this evening is State Representative André Thapedi. During the next 25 minutes, Representative Thapedi is going to discuss legislative issues including Illinois state budget crisis, the foreclosure legislation, current foreclosures legislation, and the conceal and carry gun legislation that's been in the news for the past few weeks. I invite you to call in with any questions that you may have. Our phone number is below at 312-738-1060. Our phone lines are open. Although Representative Thapedi and myself are both attorneys, we're talking about legislative issues today. So if you have any specific sort of individual case issues, foreclosure issues, or concealed weapon issues that you want to discuss, please call our CCBA lawyer referral number, and that number is 312-630-1157, extension number 1. All right, it's our great pleasure to introduce State Representative André Thapedi. Welcome this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me here this evening. It's a pleasure to be here, especially on behalf of the Cook County Bar Association, which is near and dear to my heart. I basically grew up in the Bar Association. My mother is a past president of the bar, and I basically grew up with all the folks that are running around there now, and it's a pleasure to be here with the younger folks that are moving up and doing things. And I want to encourage all the callers today, because you and I do have that skill in common as lawyers, connected with the legislation that's going on in Springfield, especially with respect to the budget crisis. Illinois is in serious financial trouble. Roughly about $15 billion is our debt. And we're thinking and coming up with innovative ways to try to raise that money. While people are not happy about the tax increase, it's strictly a financial situation that when you're $15 billion in debt, we've got to come up with that money somehow, some way. And with the drastic cuts that are being proposed, not only to seniors but also to youth, HIV, AIDS, things that have a direct impact in my community are definitely a concern to me. So I want to encourage all the callers to call in about legislative issues. Conceal and carry is a major issue in Springfield right now. And I think the interesting thing is that it's not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's more so cultural.
All right.
So you have a lot of Democrats downstate that are supporting the conceal and carry legislation, but a lot of my colleagues here in Chicago have an alternative view.
No, you've touched on a lot of good subjects. So once again, we encourage you to call at 312-738-1060. Let's talk about the budget deficit. Since you touched on it already, you say that the Illinois state budget is $15 billion in debt, in the red. Is there any sort of similarities that you can tell between our federal budget crisis and what's going on in the state of Illinois?
Absolutely. Illinois doesn't stand alone as far as being in a budgetary deficit. There are many states. I believe that there are only 4 states that are not operating in the black at this point. But Illinois clearly is one of the most challenged financially, along with New York and even the oil pumping states of Texas and Alaska have challenges. So it's something that's global, actually.
Okay. Now, so we're $15 billion in debt. Governor Quinn and legislators like yourself have been working to chop down, to cut down on this deficit. And one of the ways that you briefly mentioned that the deficit potentially could be cut is by, I believe, a tax increase. Now, could you go into details about the tax increase? Is there a difference between the tax increase for individuals and for businesses?
Yeah, well, obviously there's, we know this as lawyers, but for the benefit of your viewers, that we've already passed the tax increase, and that tax increase affects individuals as well as businesses. And that has been a challenge that many businesses have raised in the state of Illinois, indicating that as a result of the tax increase, it's driving them out of Illinois, and they're seeking other places to conduct their business operations. So again, that tax increase is something that's global. It's something that's already passed. It's definitely not enough to cut into the $15 billion deficit. So again, we're still looking at other ways to raise revenue, and if we can't raise the revenue, obviously we have to make cuts.
Now, how long will the tax increase be in effect for? Is it for an indefinite period of time, or is it for a...
Well, we have a window on it, and that's the interesting thing. Well, not a window. We have a ceiling on the amount of time that it's actually going to be there. But I will say that that's the interesting thing about Springfield, is that we bring forward legislation all the time that extends what we call a sunset provision. Okay. That a sunset provision means that a particular piece of legislation, or as it's signed into law, will be no longer valid at a certain period of time. And it's not uncommon for us to go into Springfield and file additional legislation to extend the time period. So no, that tax increase does have a limit on it.
Okay. What are some of the other ways, in addition to the tax increase, that the Governor Quinn's plan is going to address this budget deficit? Are we looking at cutting spending in certain areas? And
yeah, the answer to your question is absolutely we are. And that's the big bone of contention. What is going to be cut? That we know that things have to be cut, and it's an unfortunate reality because of the financial situation that we're in. However, there are certain things that, in my opinion, should just be completely immune to any types of cuts.
What are some of those things?
Programs for seniors, the circuit breaker program, for an example. I am a strong proponent of the circuit breaker program. It does something very meaningful for our seniors. I am not in favor of any types of cuts to the circuit breaker program and for our seniors, our youth as well. There are roughly about $14 million of cuts proposed for youth programs, and I think that we both know as African American men that our youth have to have these outlets in order to stay out of trouble and to keep their lives moving forward. So when you have these types of cuts proposed, it's essentially devastating.
All right. Now, you represent the 32nd District?
I do.
Okay. What are some of the, and you've been in office since when, 2009?
This is my second term. A lot of your viewers were definitely very giving and sending me back for another term in Springfield. And my district essentially goes from Cottage Grove on the east, Pulaski to the west, as far north as 59th Street, and as far south as 84th Street. So I have a very diverse community.
Now, when you were elected in 2009, I presume that there were issues that that your citizens are still seeing right now. Actually, I believe we have a question about a county tax issue. Let's see if we can handle this question.
Sure.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for taking my call.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening. What's your question or comment?
I just find it kind of, troubling that, while Stroger was the Cook County president, and introduced a tax that was, I thought, probably a good tax, they turn around and fought it and repealed it just to oust him and put in another president who turned around and re-implemented another tax, and then just changed the whole face of politics, from one president that was balancing the budget, to one that's having a lot of difficulty balancing the budget and, handling all the other business there.
Okay,
and being, too, that he was a black man, to oust him for a black woman. I guess that's the whole chain of events. That's the politics. And, why do they play that kind of a game on us, run that game on us?
All right. Thank you for the comment. So what the caller, I guess, is expressing some sort of frustration in regards to having one county president with the taxes, increasing taxes, and then electing another official to come in place and also increase taxes. But I guess my take on it, and you could expand on this since you are in office, is that we are so far in the red that that's one of the only immediate solutions. So let's get your take on it, Representative.
And again, I can appreciate the caller's call. I can appreciate the caller's frustration. That many of the viewers out there are frustrated. I'm very frustrated in several circumstances. However, I think it's important to note you have to draw a line of demarcation between the different bodies of government. I represent the state. While I represent all people in the 32nd District, my specific responsibility is state-related issues. I think that your caller's concern was things that are going on here in Cook County. And while we do have challenges in Cook County as well, Cook County is not immune to the budgetary problems that we're having here, not just nationally, but statewide, but also the county as well. So I can certainly understand the caller's frustration, and these are things that we have to work on. They're definitely things that we have to work on.
No. So we've touched on the budget crisis, and we're going to go into it just a tad bit more before we go into our next topic, which is foreclosure issues. However, as you know, you have a public official here. He's already mentioned his boundaries, his district boundaries. So if you're in his district or not, but if you're a citizen in the community, give us a call, 312-738-1060. You have a person here that can answer your questions and give you his thoughts, his expertise from what he's seeing and his perspective down in Springfield. Okay? Now, so you've already mentioned areas that, in terms of the budget crisis, or spending cuts that are no-goes for you, no-goes for you. Now, what are some areas that you foresee, or can you foresee that there's going to be cuts in, from the best of your knowledge?
And again, these are things that are still being debated in Springfield on a consistent basis. Step number one, that what we've done in the legislature is that Governor Quinn provides us with a proposed budget.
Okay.
Essentially, his opinion of how much money we have to spend and where that money should be spent. The legislature, and I'm referring to the House of Representatives where I sit, and the Illinois Senate, which is the other portion of the legislature, each chamber, referring to the House and the Senate, will also come up with projections about our opinion as to how much money we have to spend and what it should be spent on. So that was the first challenge that we had, is that all three of us had different numbers. Governor Quinn felt that we had X number of dollars to spend. The Illinois Senate believed that we had X number of dollars, or what Governor Quinn opined, minus roughly about $1 billion, and then the House of Representatives is a little lower than that. So as far as things that are on the chopping block, so to say, and I hate to put it that way, but that's quite frankly what it is that those things are still being negotiated. And I would encourage all of your callers to reach out to their legislators, reach out to the governor, and please tell him or her what exactly is something that cannot be cut, because everything is subject